All right, welcome back. In this video, you're gonna get more hands-on experience using, creating custom classes and using them in practical examples that you might actually want in your game. For this one, I would like you to create a program where you can use different weapons within your inventory. Make it so that maybe you have a player class that can equip different weapons when you press keys, like 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever. You don't have to make 5 weapons, it's up to you, but you just have to have at least a couple you can switch between when you press a key. When you hit the space bar, you should use the weapon that you have equipped. And using the weapon just means it prints out a message that includes the name of the weapon, like using sword or using shield. The traits of the weapon should at least be name, ID, and attack strength. So that's it. That is your challenge for this. Go ahead and pause the video here, stop the video, and do your best to create this program on your own. If you just kind of want to watch and see how to solve this, I'm going to show you an example right now. So we want to create a custom class to define what a weapon is, right? And a mono behavior class so that we can actually press keys and display what weapon we're using. In some games, you probably have like dozens of different types of weapons, and it doesn't really make sense to create separate classes for each individual type of weapon, especially when each weapon shares a lot of the same traits. So let's dive in. I'm going to delete the examples from last time and let's go for it. So in the scripts folder, I'm going to right click and create a new mono behavior script, and I'm going to call this weapon. This weapon script, even though I made it mono behavior, I'm going to empty everything out, delete mono behavior, and now we have our custom class. So this is going to be a blueprint for every weapon that we can pick up. So what defines a weapon? We know we have a public string name, we have a public integer ID, and we have a public integer attack strength. Obviously, weapons have way more stuff than this going on, especially depending on what kind of game you're making, like whether your weapon has hits, like hit points, like how many hits it can take before it breaks, whether or not your weapon conducts electricity or has like special particle effects or stuff like that. You can totally add more variables than this. For now, I'm just going to use these 3, and let's create a constructor to define and populate the properties of each weapon as we make them. So I'm going to make a public weapon, and in here we will say string name, int ID, and int attack strength. Inside the curly brackets, we will say this dot name equals name, this dot ID equals ID, and this dot attack strength equals attack strength. Now that we've defined what a weapon is, in our challenge, we do need to be able to equip different weapons when we press keys. Key presses are a behavior, so this script needs to be attached to a game object. So we need to create a mono behavior script. So in our scripts folder, I'm going to create an actual mono behavior script. I'm going to call this player. I'm going to make a game object. Let's say it's our cylinder, good friend, and then let's add our player to the cylinder. All right, let's give our player a selection of weapons that they can use. Maybe their starter weapon will be like a tree branch. So to do that, let's use our constructor. Let's create a public weapon tree branch. So in start, we will say tree branch equals a new weapon, tree branch. The ID will be 0, and what's the third one? It's attack strength. Oh, it doesn't matter. 5. It's weak. All right, now that we have a tree branch, let's make it so that we can press different keys. Like our challenge says, we need to press different keys to equip different weapons. So let's start by being able to press keys. So we're going to say if input.getKeyDown, keycode.alpha 0. I'm going to add just 1 or 2 more keys. Input.getKeyDown, keycode.alpha 1, and I'll do 1 more. If input.getKeyDown, keycode.alpha 2. Okay, so how do we actually equip? Well, maybe we need an integer because our weapon has an ID. So maybe in our player class, we create a private integer called weapon equipped. And maybe when we press the 0 key, weapon equipped equals 0. When we press 1, weapon equipped equals 1. And when we press 2, weapon equipped equals 2. If this weapon equipped integer matches the ID of our weapon, then that's how we know that we have it equipped, right? So for our tree branch, it equals 0. So when we have weapon equipped equals 0, that's how we know we have the tree branch. It'll make sense soon if it doesn't yet, I promise. So now that we have this, the last thing we need is we need to use the weapon. So if input.getKeyDown, keycode.space. So what do we want to do? We want to swing our sword, right? We want to use the weapon. Well, using the weapon doesn't exist yet. So in our custom class of weapon, we can actually create create a public void swing weapon, right? And what do we want to do when we swing the weapon? We want to move it. We want to maybe deduct hit points or whatever it is. We want to check for damage and all that stuff. For now, we're just going to say debug.log swinging plus name plus exclamation, right? So for now, in our player, in our script, we can say tree branch dot swing weapon, right? And when we hop back into Unity and we hit play and we hit space, it says it's swinging the tree branch. Perfect. Now let's make it so that we're completing more of this. We want to use the weapon that you have equipped. So we need to equip different weapons when we press 0, 1, or 2, right? So let's make different weapons. So in the player script, instead of defining weapons like this, let's define them in the inspector. I'm going to say a public weapon array brackets, and I'll call this weapon inventory. Delete the tree branch, and we'll delete this part as well. Now back in Unity on the cylinder, we don't actually have our weapon inventory, right? Even though I made a public weapon inventory, nothing is appearing in the inspector. And that's because in our weapon script, we did not add the system.serializable attribute to the top. Now, when we go back into Unity, we should be able to see our weapon inventory. Beautiful. So I'll add 3 weapons real quick. I'm going to add a tree branch, ID 0, attack strength 4. This will be a rusty sword, ID 2, attack strength 10. And the last element, let's make a broadsword. ID is 1, attack strength is 15. And see, I've put them out of order. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I can drag this up if we want, so it's 0, 1, 2. Now that we have an inventory of our weapons, let's make it so that we can swing different kinds of weapons when we hit space. To do this, in our input check for space key, we want to loop through all of the items in our weapon inventory and check to see if weapon equipped matches that ID, right? So we're going to say for each var weapon in our weapon inventory, we want to check if the weapon.id equals the weapon equipped. If it does, then we've found the weapon that we have equipped, and we can just say weapon.swing weapon. Awesome. For fun, I'm going to set this weapon equipped to public just so you can see it change. On the cylinder, we can see our weapon equipped is 0, so I'm going to hit play. When I hit space, it says it's swinging the tree branch, right? If I change this weapon equipped by hitting the key number 1, now weapon equipped equals 1. And if I hit space, it's now swinging the broadsword. I can hit 2, and now we're swinging the rusty sword. If I change this weapon equipped to like 10, we know that there's no weapon in our inventory that has an ID of 10, so when I hit space, nothing happens. Perfect. Yay! So this is just a good example of how you can use custom classes to create a modular script. Nothing that we did right here is hard-coded. We generically defined what happens when you have a weapon, what it means to be a weapon, and what happens when you swing the weapon. And based on this data, we can create game logic to define what happens next. Awesome. Okay, this was really big. In the next video, we're gonna take a look at something called class inheritance and get into a couple more challenges. Okay, I will see you in the next one.